So that was two things working that I didn't think either were going to work. The first was on my last van trip, we had a problem with fuel flow to this stove. And the problem is really this guy, which is a fuel regulator. What the stove was doing was the first burner would light up and be fine, usually. And then if you turn on the second burner, they would both lose power and shut down. Or not shut down completely, but just a trickle of fuel. Sometimes it would happen running just one burner. And I was pretty sure that the problem was this jet boil pressure regulator or fuel flow regulator. The problem is that these are garbage. A lot of people online talk about how they break. This is my second one of these, which I have to say Jetboil replaced very quickly, didn't need any conversation. I was just like, my fuel flow regulator is leaking. What do I do? And they're like, we send you a new one. I think clearly because they were worried about the liability aspects and what if this thing explodes and kills me, they won't look good, right? So I after this problem developed where it would depower itself, there were a couple things that I was thinking. I am running it off of that Ignic fuel tank, which is awesome, but I had just filled it. And I suspected that increased pressure this thing couldn't handle. And so I made a point of trying to run the stove as much as I could off that tank to get some of the fuel out of it and see if that solved the problem. This morning on video, I fully expected that to not work. I kind of wanted it to not work so that I could show it to you, not working. But of course, it worked fine. So while we were on the road dealing with this problem, and it would work perfectly from the green canisters. So I picked up another one just in case. I had to run from it because we were out for like a week. I wanted to cover the bases, but I really wanted to run a little bit of fuel out of that Ignic canister. I went online to try and buy a new one, sold out. But I already knew this, but I did some digging. I walked into REI with this piece and with permission of the staff was like, can I just see if this piece, which is where it connects to the stove, will actually connect to other brands so that maybe I can buy a different brand. And none of the ones that I tried worked. I really wanted it to work with Coleman because Coleman's been around forever. They make 1 million parts. You can buy anything for Coleman. But no, Jetboil has to make this proprietary, which got me thinking about cross-compatibility in outdoor gear. So I think cross-compatibility in the outdoors, I think in any industry, but particularly in outdoors, it's super important. And when I talk about cross-compatibility, here's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about accessories or parts from company A will work with pieces or primary items from company B and vice versa. So a great example of this would be if I could use Coleman fuel regulators on my Jetboil stove or my Camp Chef stove or my Summit Series stove or whatever. And that would be great because it would mean if my stove broke down someplace, I wouldn't have to reach out to Jetboil to get a replacement piece. I could walk into any outdoor store and whatever replacement piece they had, the fittings should fit. And I now know that this piece right here, this is standard across the industry, but this is a proprietary Jetboil piece of hardware. It's very close, but the thread pitch is a little bit different than Coleman. Yeah, and we'll come back to that. Another great example of this is roof racks. I spent a great deal of my life dealing with roof racks, and years ago, Thule and Yakima, that's how you pronounce both of those companies' names, Thule and Yakima decided to make it so that their accessories would work on the other company's crossbars. So I think pretty much universally, the arrow bar shape accessories will work on either company, and the round bar accessories will work on square bars, and the square bars will work on round bars. Back in the day, Yakima was round bars and Thule was square bars, and now most of them use a wing-shaped bar. And so that's cross-compatible, which was great because I really, back in the day, liked the Yakima round bars. But Yakima's kayak accessories were not as good as Thule's. So I could use Thule accessories on my Yakima round bars. And if you're wondering why I preferred the Yakima round bars, people would complain that things would slide around, but a round bar is way stronger than a square bar. Okay. Other great examples of that are canister stoves. The fuel canisters, regardless of the manufacturer, will work with any of the stoves. Despite the fact that they say on them, always use our fuel with our stoves, there is no difference. I've mixed and matched 1,000,000 of them, literally 1,000,000. I kept track, and they worked beautifully. Another great example of this is the Nalgene lid. So the lid on your Nalgene bottle, hang on, the lid on your Nalgene bottle, the wide mouth style, works on many things. And so you can put this lid on an MSR dromedary bag if you've broken or lost your lid. The MSR Sweetwater, the MSR Waterworks water filters will screw directly onto this bottle because the underside is the same thread pitch as the lid. I think that is super cool. And there are lots of other companies that do the same thing. Oh, another one. These quick disconnects that came with my Dometic Go water pump are the same quick disconnects for Camelback hydration reservoirs, which are the same quick disconnects as Platypus hydration reservoirs, which are the same quick disconnects from Sawyer water filters. And so you can build any sort of system you want. And while I was pulling out those Dometic parts, this Dometic spigot lid, also an Nalgene lid. Cross compatibility like this is super important and it's super convenient. And companies fight it because they think it's going to cost them money, when in the long run, I think it makes them money because people that don't buy their base product can still buy their accessories. So that brings us back to this piece of gear, a replacement pressure regulator for a Jetboil pressure regulator that I didn't trust. This piece, which I replaced the Jetboil regulator with, is made by Camp Chef. And I didn't think it was going to work. It was $25. I ordered it online, but I read one person said that they had done this exact same thing, that the Camp Chef worked with the Jetboil Genesis. I didn't expect it to work. I'm pleasantly surprised. We're going to keep watching and keep seeing whether or not they both work. Or if I end up having to replace the stove, which means I need to redo the drawer, which everything fits in really nicely. So when you buy gear, think about cross-compatibility. Will this work with the stuff I have? Will this work down the road? It'll make your life a whole lot easier. It's not easy to do. Not every company makes it easy. I'm sure there's a million examples of good cross-compatibility in the outdoors and bad cross-compatibility in the outdoors. One that's bad that I think of that is kayaking specific is if you paddle a sit-on-top kayak. They have scuppers, which are holes in the hull, which let water drain out. But in the winter, you want to put a scupper stopper in those holes so that less water comes up through the boat and you stay drier. The problem is that every manufacturer has its own size for scupper stoppers. It got to the point at REI where we were just making them out of foam and duct tape because it was easier than trying to figure out what the right sizes were for all of our different rental boats. So that's an example of the paddling community not working together to make a universal size scupper stopper. They should really do that. Hey, if you enjoyed this, do me a favor, hit like, hit subscribe. Otherwise, I'll see you outside. Oh, that feels like it works.